that year in January and February. I first wrote that in 2008.
Right, okay. Well, see, as you're speaking about the wandering poles responsible for the birds and stuff like that, is this because of if I'm picking you up correctly, is this because of the pole shift or an axle tilt or an axis tilt? And
I don't think that we will have an axis tilt, but it's basically the cause of the bird deaths is the same thing that has caused the Earth to expand. It's the same mechanism because it's all energetic, and it is all related to the sun, and it's somewhat complex. But all planets grow, all suns grow. As the planets grow, because they whirl around the middle of the sun, they yank the sun around faster in the middle than at the poles, and it causes a level of excitation that causes the sun to pour out more energy, and that these outpourings of energy are then used by the planets to grow. But at this particular time in history, we've got an excess of that energy coming out of the sun for a bunch of different reasons, and it is that excess of energy that has struck the Earth, and in my opinion has caused the planet to grow, which has been misreported as being 4 inches off in our tilt. But that same outpouring of energy affects us at magnetic levels, and that outpouring of energy hitting those magnetic levels has indeed been ultimately the root cause or the proximate cause of the bird and animal deaths. And I'm here to tell you that as we go over this year, that energy will begin to affect larger animals, including humans.
Yeah, because there was one particular section in there that suggested that humans are going to be hypersensitive. And also that their brain processes, their thinking process, their bodily, or not their bodily functions, but their body functions would be somewhat disrupted.
Maybe, and it will depend on individual humans as to how sensitive they are and so on, but the range of the disruptions will be mild anomia. You can't really think of the word you want. All the way up to, as you say, bodily functions being affected, that everything kind of like goes short circuit and you stand in the middle of the zebra crossing drooling on your knees. So it will be that kind of a range, and it will occur over this next year. The issue for all of us is it's not going to be ubiquitous. It's not going to happen everywhere, and it won't happen to the same degree everywhere that it does occur. And a lot of it will be due to what the state of the magnetosphere and the ionosphere over your head is. So you may see that it happens, for instance, let's just pick a place out in the Saharan desert, and yet you might be in Cairo and you don't see any effects at all.
Okay, with you. Okay, well,
this may, by the way, just as an aside, this may account for all of the chemtrails and the fact that they have a tendency to concentrate the chemtrails over dense population centers, and they don't do it over rural areas.
Yeah, it's normally confined to the more populated areas, as we know. Just as we're talking about all that kind of stuff, have you ever read The Final Theory by Mark McCutcheon?
No, I have not.
No, okay. All right, okay. Yeah, guys, you're back live, tnsradio.com. As I say, sorry about that. We had some technical problems that I had to go and deal with. But I'm glad to say we do have Clif still on the line with us. Clif, how you doing?
Doing just fine.
That's the game. Well, Clif, I hope you don't mind, but we've got some questions. I dare say you would expect it. We've got some questions lined up for you.
Sure.
Is there any more data suggesting war with Iran, given what's going on in the Middle East?
There's data still continuing to pile up. The last time we did the spiders for the Israeli mistake. The Israeli mistake I'd always put as being focused on Iran, but really the mistake language, the geography of where they hit was the last thing we interpreted. So we still have data for the Israelis doing a stupid military move. Still there?
Yep, still here. I'm listening to you.
Oh, okay. I'm getting all kinds of error messages. So yes, we do have the Israelis out and about causing problems, but we don't have it specifically focused on Iran the last time I looked.
Okay.
It's weird about that. I mean, I've got to say that usually we do not have this kind of thing. Usually when we're really wrong about something, we don't have anything in that data stream show up anyplace. And so I'm a little bit nonplussed about this because as part of the Israeli mistake, we'd always had the language about volcanoes and radioactivity going together. And we had some small level of that show up with the volcano in the Gulf of Mexico that had radioactivity coming up as a result, side effect of the oil involved. But it was just a minor level of the language being fulfilled. Now we've got a great deal of the fulfillment of the ill winds, radioactivity blowing around the world 9 times, causing 2.2 million deaths potentially in the U.S. or continental United States or continental North America. But that had always in our data sets been associated with the Israeli mistake. So it really does give me pause. And in terms of I'm sitting here thinking, well, maybe there's some. It's kind of strange to put it this way, but maybe karmically the planet has to deal with the nuclear problem, whether it was going to be caused by the Israelis or not. We all still have to go through it, because that sure does seem to be the way it's shaping out. Now, if that's the case, within that data set, we have within the data set for the radioactive language and the volcano language being associated together, which, by the way, we now have in Japan, because there's the earthquake and also the volcano going off along with the nuke plant meltdowns. But within that language, way back, I think maybe 6-8 months ago, even longer than that, we had the language associated with the earthquake in the United States that causes a great deal of economic disruption. So I think, given that part of that set is manifesting, I see no reason to suppose that the other part also will not manifest, which basically means we've got a big earthquake coming. And it kind of fits with the expanding planet model, because in our viewpoint, it's very much like you've got an orange or some other spherical fruit, and you take a hypodermic and you inject a bunch of water into the middle of the orange. The skin of the orange will eventually rupture, showing you that the orange tried to grow to accommodate that new matter. And it is a process. It's not a state or an event. So we're still ongoing in that process. And if we look at what has happened recently, we've had the Christchurch earthquake, but we've also had, prior to that, we've had this crack in the planet show up in Africa, and then we've had a further crack in Pakistan that is in a direct great circle line with the crack in Africa. Mm-hmm. And then the Christchurch earthquake is associated with this particular rift in the ocean that meanders all the way up through these other rifts to be associated with the edge of the Ring of Fire there near Japan. So it's all sort of related, and they all are at points on the Earth where the equatorial bulge rises from the main part of the planet. So the only part of the Ring of Fire as yet untouched in this series of events, because we've had Christchurch, we've had Japan, we've had Chile, we've had all these earthquakes in the South Pacific related to Christchurch, Tonga et al., and the only place not yet touched is the west coast of the North American continent. Seems logical.
Yeah. Tectonic plate stuff, huh?
No, actually, the tectonic plate theory is bogus. It's an academic understanding that is entirely a misreading of what's going on.
Really?
For instance, the academics say that, the giant continental masses go moving about at the rate of a millimeter a year or some stupid number. And yet they don't ever say why they go moving about. Why should they move about? The tectonic plate theory says that there's a giant subduction zone up near where I live here in the Pacific Northwest of the United States, where supposedly the Pacific plate goes diving underneath the North American plate, which is absolutely excrement from the beginning. There's no subduction zone anywhere on the planet. There's never been one found. They had specific characteristics when they were initially identified in the thinking of the tectonic theory, and over time the tectonic plate theory modified itself to accommodate the fact that they never found any subduction zone, but they never changed the core of the theory that makes subduction zone necessary. Because in the tectonic plate theory, the Earth stays the same side. Material just kind of like boils up for some unknown reason out in the middle of the planet, causes the continents to go walkabout, and then goes diving underneath the continents to go back to the middle of the planet with no rhyme or reason as to why any of this should be occurring. And in fact, what is occurring is that material matter is being created in the middle of the planet in the form of simple molecules like hydrogen, helium, et al., working its way up until it starts hitting the more reactive molecules that we call carbon and oxygen, and then it starts creating non-compressible matter. If I'm correct, the plasma core would create vast quantities of hydrogen and other gases in the middle of our planet, but because those are compressible, they don't have any direct effect on us until we get enough energy for the plasma core to start bonding those hydrogen and oxygen molecules into water, which is not compressible, and it starts fracturing the Earth from the inside out, so to speak. Just the reverse of what the oil guys do when they go out fracking the land with giant water streams to release oil. And water is very good at shattering stone. That's why the oil companies use vast quantities of it, and that's why they're polluting vast quantities of the planet, trying to jam salt water in there to shove the oil out. And so it's the same mechanism. And so that's what's occurring. And so Japan is at 45 degrees, more or less, which is the spot on the planet where the equatorial bulge lifts up. Same spot includes, the same latitude includes areas like Pakistan and California. Mm-hmm. And I'm at 47, very geoactive areas. And that's because the equatorial bulge lifts up here, and this is where the matter this is where the skin of the orange has to crack the most in order to accommodate the level of growth going on. And then there's a different kind of growth and so forth occurring at the equator, and that's why we see specific different kinds of effects of the growth in different parts of the planet. So, for instance, the fjords in Scotland and, the craggy bits over on the west coast, as well as in Norway, as well as up in here, all have the same kind of origin relative to the type of cracking that must occur. And you guys, by the way, in Scotland are not that far from one of the largest single cracking events that ever took place on this planet, and it formed what's known as the Nansen fracture. And here, for instance, we had Japan move 8 feet as a whole. The main island of Japan went walkabout 8 feet in a single kawump, more or less, as part of this earthquake. But Scotland and Greenland and all of the areas up there are near this Nansen fracture, and that event moved continents 500 miles in what appears to be maybe as long as 24 hours. But it was a very brief period of time. And so we've seen violent ripping and cracking mechanisms. The good news for us, though, is that while this is an ongoing continuous event and we face some really nasty stuff happening to the planet in the year 2011 and 2012, all the way out to probably 2015, due to the solar issues, nonetheless, there are some physics involved that say the larger the planet, even though it will crack more, the impact on the planet as a whole will be less simply because we have larger volume. So it's kind of like saying, well, the bad news is that you've got a bullet hole, but the good news is that you're so big that the bullet hole is actually a small percentage of your total overall flesh.
Yeah.
Makes sense?
Well, see, in terms of earth bulges, as you're saying there, would that describe Yellowstone?
No. We're talking about the equatorial bulge. This is not an earth bulge. Okay, this is a big difference. Yellowstone was a giant pocket